Okay, I'm going to go back to the detail script liner. I'm going to start putting the blue on his head. It's going to be cobalt blue, kind of dark on this side, and I'm going to add white to it for a little bit of highlight on that back side of his head. And sometimes I like to take a rag and just fold it over like this and lay it right here, and then when I clean I can just blot and I don't have to keep a rag in my hand all the time. It's a pretty handy little tip to know. I'm going to take cobalt blue and I'm going to thin it down just a little bit, enough to get it off the brush. I probably will need my steady stick for this. And I'm going to try to keep my arm out of the way here if I can. These are pretty bright blue, this bird. Cobalt blue makes a pretty good blue for these. Blue jays are blue, but they're a different shade of blue. They're more of a muted ultramarine, gray ultramarine color. At least the ones that I see at my feeder, that's how I paint them. It tends to work a little nicer. This is where all the details are, guys, so take your time with this. You got to cut in around these edges. I'm going to leave just the slightest, smallest little sliver of white around his eye if I can. Just to separate that eye from the background, all the blue. So this is where you want to take your time, slow down. See how he's coming to life now? I'm going to slide my stick over here. This wing is folded around behind him, so there's not really a lot of detail. We don't have to show any feather lines or anything like that on it, really. Let it kind of taper down to infinity as it wraps around him. I hope you give this painting a shot. It's not nearly as complicated as you think. Like I showed you, by taping out the fence, makes it really easy. I didn't even have to draw the fence. I let the tape do the work for me. Now obviously if you're working on a bigger canvas with a bigger bird and you want a bigger fence, you just use a wider tape. You can get tape in all different sizes and widths. So I just use what works. And if worse comes to worse, you could always trim it. Now this wing over here is going to get a little bit of color on it as well. My paint feels a little sticky, which tells me it's getting dry, so I'm going to add another drop of thinner. Orange and blue are complementary colors on a color wheel, so that's why this little guy looks so vivid. They say that complementary colors will look very nice when they're used in conjunction with each other. And that's why this really snaps. I'm going to come underneath here. Be careful of the picket. I'm outlining around the picket where his tail comes behind. It's just a matter of filling this in. From here, basically all I need to do is highlight the back of his head and put his little toes curled over the front of that picket that he's sitting on. And just that easy. He falls together. All right. This is the tedious part, just filling in all around the outline. Okay, not too bad. And notice that I was tapping that on there, so I want that feathery look. Don't make everything too smooth. And you want this outline of the blue a little rough against that orange. Not like he's wearing a mask. Make it a little jittery. It's orange feathers against blue feathers. So you want a rougher outline right there. Not so much on the wings, but on that area of the neck and throat. Okay, I'm going to take that cobalt blue and I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. I say a little bit, but it's going to be enough to make a difference. Notice that there's a distinct value change right there. I'm going to flatten this out like a little chisel on two sides. And on the left, as we're looking at it, it'd be the right of his head on the back of his neck, but on this side I'm going to put on a little bit of a highlight. And I'm going to make it just a tad lighter. I'm going to take a little more white. Because as you work it into the blue, it picks up the blue, and that blue is pretty strong, so it darkens your color down, your value. So I'm going to tap that on there and give a little bit of light on there. Still want just a tad more. Get it light enough to make a difference. There we go. That's just one of those adjustments. It's like making soup. You got to dip the ladle in and taste it every now and then. I'll wipe some of the paint off the brush so I can get a smoother transition from the light to dark as it wraps around. All right, he's looking pretty good.